Hey everyone. Okay, I'm gonna wait a couple seconds for people to join me. I need to actually get to my regular content on my YouTube channel, but I wanted to just pop on here really quick and just sort of tie up some stuff that I was reporting on today and just sort of like what moving forward is really important for me to be able to do my job and just for you guys to kind of understand like how this all works. So, hi everyone. I'm going to turn off the comments just for right now because I just want to be able to say this without like any distractions. I'll turn comments on back in a second, but just let me say this. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a dog here. So, the goal in this reporting is not to hurt the dancers. It is not to cause any pain or anything like that to the people that are involved. When we're focusing on a cult that is being very controlling, the goal is to focus on the leaders of that group and to just investigate what they're doing. The stuff that you're seeing online right now, I can't even tell you how normal this is. Like, I've covered the IBLP, I've covered, which is the Institute in Basic Life Principles. I've covered stuff about NXIVM when that was going on. I covered, the FLDS. I've covered the Apostolic United Brethren. I've covered the Kingston Clan. I've covered Gwen Shamblin's group, lots of different groups. So when you're online and you're like watching what the dancers are doing, you just have to expect that whatever they say is probably not going to be the truth. Usually leaders in groups like these are teaching their followers how to lie, and lying becomes second nature. Sometimes leaders in these groups will justify the lying as a means to an end. So they'll say like, we can lie because we are righteous in our whatever the lie is about, okay? Or they'll develop like answers, or they'll be given strategies of how to deflect and gaslight questions. So a lot of times when you are asking someone in a cult a question, rather than actually addressing the actual question that you have, what they'll do instead is they'll answer a question, but they won't actually directly ask the question. They will flip it back on you. So if you're concerned about someone being in a cult, they'll say to you, well, you're in a cult. Or you're concerned about someone's controlling you, and they'll say, well, you're being controlled. Or your husband's controlling you. Or whatever. You know, up is down, left is right, grass is yellow, sky is purple in this world, okay? A lot of it's built on conspiracies, and it's not built in reality. And they thrive in a system of chaos and confusion. And that's really what the ultimate goal is. And their leaders are generally narcissists that gaslight them. And then they in turn gaslight people because they're being gaslit. So they have been told over and over and over that their reality is not what it is. They're some of them could be guessing their reality, but they're never going to say that because any critical thinking is frowned upon. So when we focus on what they're saying, just expect the confusion, expect there to be lies, really, okay? Other people were wanting me to look at, so that was one thing I wanted to talk about. So instead of focusing on really what the dancers are doing, what my goal is right now is I want to be able to, and I need to focus my energy on the actual Shin family and the root origin of this problem. And that includes a lot of information that I have to do offline. But what I need from you is if you have experience with the dancers where you were dancing with them, or you've worked with them, or you've worked with the Shins, that's the kind of information I need. If you have leads on that stuff. The stuff that's happening on social media, I don't want to, I'll report on some of it, but I don't want to spend all of my time and energy focusing on what's happening on social media, because then what this turns into is drama or tea. And this isn't drama or tea for the people that are involved. This is real life for the families and the friends and even the people that are part of this cult. So the enemies here are not the dancers. The enemies are not the people that are victimized by the cult. The enemies will always be the leaders, or I guess not even the enemies. The person that we should be looking at is not them, because they're getting led by someone else. So it would be like, I don't know, if you had a pimp, are you going to go after the girl that's working for him and start like saying she's a liar and she's this and she's that? Or are you going to like start looking at the pimp? You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to focus your energy on the pimp. The prostitute or the woman that's being trafficked is the victim. So, second of all, there's going to be a lot of things that come up as I'm reporting that are going to relate to my experience in covering cults, which will include the misuse of theology, commonalities between one group to a next, patterns that I've seen from one group to a next. That doesn't, and just remember that when I'm speaking about the Bible or passages, I'm not speaking to Christianity, okay? A lot of these groups, what they thrive on is they take Christianity and then they add to it. And they create aspects of Christianity that are not Christian. And so what we say is, if we're referring to them as this isn't really Christian, it's because they're adding parts that just aren't biblical. When you have all of these passages in the Bible flat out telling ones that false prophets do not receive messages from God, and if anyone claims to get messages from God, they're lying. So when you have people that claim to be prophetizing, or they're getting prophecies from God and then speaking these as fact, that's a huge red flag, because it's not biblical and it's not natural. It's just not a part of Christianity. So when you start adding things, or you start adding teachings to the actual Bible, that's how these cults thrive, because to the masses, they just look like they're Christians, but they're not, okay? Because the forms of what it comes down to is what these faiths are. It's the faith of the leader. It's really worshiping the cult leader, and the cult leader is using whatever their belief system is to justify their control and their power. So when we talk about it and I say, well, this isn't really Christian, I'm not saying that they're not claiming to believe in Christ. I'm saying they're truly just believing whatever Robert's telling them to believe. And he'll use the Bible and he'll twist it, and he'll leave things out of the Bible, or he'll focus on certain aspects of the Bible and not share other parts of the Bible. It's cult logic is very difficult. It's very black and white. It's also very gaslighting, mind control, messy. Okay, so I'm not against Christians. I'm not against people that are of belief. We are focusing on the intricacies of cults and how cults behave. So I'm not trying to say that if you're a believer that I don't think you're in a cult. If you have free will and your church is not telling you what to do, what to wear, how to act, who to be friends with, who to associate with, how to spend your money, I mean, really, if you have free will of your life, you are not in a cult. Destructive cults will control every aspect of your life. Okay. So, next, this is like a lot. Next, the stuff with the crowdfunding. So I got a ton of messages about this thing that was brought up by Vic Slavic for the Ukraine. So simply being asked to look into the crowdfunding source, all I did was looked at the crowdfunding source. Is this a legitimate source? What are the potential risks for anyone that donates? And you can donate with whatever you want to do. So when I was looking at this specific search, all I found was just what was recent. And what was recent was that the person that runs this crowdfunding site was interviewed by Parliament in Canada last week, and he said that he would allow the KKK to fundraise on his site if it was legal. And the KKK is designated as a terrorist organization. So when you have an organization and a crowdfunding source saying, yeah, we would totally allow them to raise money, that can be problematic. That doesn't mean that what he's doing is wrong. It just means that that site's going to end up being like very susceptible to being hacked and a target of people that don't like hate groups. And they were hacked in February, and 92,000 people's data, their passports, their photographs, their IP addresses, their actual, like their exact locations were leaked. Credit card information, and it was because they were targeted specifically around this platform allowing hate groups and terrorist groups to fundraise. So I'm not implying that he's not going to get the money to his father, simply that this is the problem with this platform. You can donate to whoever you want. There's a lot of platforms out there, but there's also a lot of NGOs that work specifically in war-torn countries and countries that are dealing with conflict. And so sometimes looking at the organizations that actually have on-the-ground services can be a better way to make sure that the money gets there. There's lots of different reputable organizations you can donate to directly to help people in the Ukraine if you feel like you want to help, but you don't want to specifically give money to them. Ultimately, anyone that chooses to donate to these people, the risk goes to the people that donate. That's it. You can't police how people choose to donate. And I wasn't trying to say that you shouldn't donate. You should do whatever you want to do. At the end of the day, it's your choice how you spend your money, and I'm not going to police it. And if something illegal happens, me saying don't do that doesn't do anything, because what if it's legitimate? I don't want to stop it. What if he legitimately is going to send that money to his dad? What if he's legitimately going to help the people in his dad's community? Then I would be preventing those people from getting that money. So you don't want to prevent actual help if possible, okay? If you don't agree with it, then just don't donate. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I did remove those posts, not because I thought what I posted was wrong, but people started arguing about the Proud Boys. And listen, you guys, I'm not here to play politics, because I try to remain neutral on my platform. But if I have people in my comments arguing that the Proud Boys are not a terrorist organization, which they've been labeled by Canada or listed as a hate group by a neutral third-party watchdog group, the Southern Poverty Law Group, that literally says that they're a hate group, and they're an extremist group that's known for doing, this is my experience with the Proud Boys, and I think this is why I'm so sensitive to it, and I just want to share my experience. But during, I'm in Minneapolis, okay? I'm not in Minneapolis, but I'm right outside of Minneapolis. And George Floyd, we all know he was murdered, right? So when George Floyd was murdered, my husband and I grew up in Minneapolis. My husband grew up in the area not far from where they were looting and rioting and burning things down. They burnt down, and it wasn't just, it was what happened was not only were people that were part of that were outraged about the murder, but then other people came in, like white supremacists and the Proud Boys, and they were trying to create chaos. And so why I don't like the Proud Boys is because several of them were literally found with Molotov cocktails, bombs that they were trying to get to the U.S. to the Capitol. There was several of them that were arrested with guns, really heavy weapon and artillery. And during the same time that all of this was happening, I was in the hospital with my son, who was dealing with, I don't even remember what the issue was at the time, but he was inpatient, and we had to have the National Guard outside of our hospital because of what the Proud Boys were doing and how they were trying to literally bomb our state capitol. And thankfully nothing like that happened, but a lot of things did get burnt down. Now, the people that burnt things down were not just the Proud Boys, but when people start trying to defend them and say they're not a hate group, I'm like, dude, if you have a Molotov cocktail and you're associating with this group and you're trying to drive to St. Paul, they had to close off the traffic. They had to close the bridge to St. Paul so that they couldn't get to the Capitol. So having lived through everything that happened with George Floyd's murder, I am very sensitive to anyone talking about or defending the Proud Boys. And I don't think most rational people will defend the Proud Boys. And so we just don't want to support any organization that is got bombs. you guys. Like, that's just not cool. They also were, one of my good friends was at the same time living in Minneapolis, and she had them driving around her neighborhood, and they had heavy like AKs, automatic rifles, just with hanging out of their cars, like ready to go at anyone. So this isn't like, that's like anarchy, and that's not, it didn't help the situation with George's death. It made it just worse, right? Everyone that was involved in the looting and the chaos, it was horrible, and there were so many arrests, and our city is still healing from that. So this story, seeing George Floyd's name used sort of as a weapon, is really upsetting, especially living in this world. And also, like, my husband's friends are like his really good friends from high school. They're good friends with George's girlfriend that survived and is living and has been, she testified in court. And so, we're like two degrees of separation from him. And so when you have people that are directly affected by the murder, it's just very hard to see people defending the people that created such chaos in our community because of it. So, and then on top of that, it's also very hard because the website, the crowdfunding source that he's using, again, they raised money for the police officers to get out on bail and pay for their defense. Thankfully, those officers are now in prison, and that's good, right? But using race to divide is not like an uncommon thing. This is like, think of like Charles Manson. He wanted to start a race war. Like this like cults will pick really, really, really like specific, hard charged topics that will cause a division and a divisive nature, so that you're not focusing on what's happening with the cult and you're distracted by all the other crap that they're throwing out, so that you don't pay attention to everything else. So I specifically put out some court records today because factually I don't report on stuff like criminal cases or records without having valid proof. So one of the accounts that was linked to the cult was trying to say that the former cult leader of B-Dash, Tie-Dyes, and Concrete was not a sex offender. And sure, he's not on the registry today, but he was for like 20 years, I think, in Oregon. And then he was on the registry, added to the registry in California in 2018. And he has convictions for sex crimes. And he was convicted of doing things to 4 women. He had to pay restitution to the women as well. And he served time in prison. And they're trying to act like that didn't happen. And so I just provided the records to show you, like, hey, I don't report things that I can't verify. This was court records. It's all there. Here's the judgment. Here's what happened. Here's his plea. Do with this what you want. And then same with the registry information. I couldn't find the actual registry info, but I could find the archived info through a background check source. So I'm showing you, yes, he was on the registry at one point. Anyone that wants to defend sex offenders, no thank you. No thanks. Obviously, my concern is that they have already been involved with one cult leader that was a sex offender. So anytime you start talking about cults, sex is always like a huge part, like sex offenses are a huge part of cults often. I'm not saying that that's what's happening here, but it's like something that you want to keep your like senses up for. And then I was getting I'm getting messages about like rumors about things that people may or may not have done, and things that may or may not have happened to women and that kind of stuff. Okay, so here's my policy about reporting on any sort of allegation of sexual abuse. In regards to anything that doesn't have a police report, I try to stay away from, or that doesn't have a court record, because allegations of sexual abuse, while they are very telling, I would have a hard time as an independent journalist standing by a without verifiable proof the story of another person. And that doesn't mean that I don't believe you. It's just that I don't want to be in a position of liability where I'm accusing someone of sex crimes and it didn't happen. So if you have allegations or if you know of police reports or court records, that's the kind of stuff that I want to know. If there is corroborating evidence, then we can maybe think about it. But I want to table that kind of stuff because, again, it really, especially if it's just members, it distracts from the shins. What we want to focus on right now is the shins. So today I also posted a bunch of stuff about the various locations of the church so you can see sort of like how the church evolved. I posted about how they were using a Marines photo and they were calling it an Army of God or Soldiers for Christ. So not all churches start out extreme. Like generally they kind of morph and just become more and more extreme. Like the more, depending on how like delusional and erratic the leader is. And as they start entering into the more and more extreme belief systems, stockpiling of ammunition and guns and not respecting the land of the law is not uncommon with a lot of these extremist cults. So another thing that you just want to keep an eye on for is if you know anything about records for guns or that kind of stuff, okay? Because if, say, guns were involved, and I'm not implying that there are, I'm just saying if guns are involved, that can add another layer of why people might be scared. So if they know that leaders have guns and are armed, they don't know unpredictably what could happen if they wanted to leave. So there's that another level there. There's lots of different ways these groups work. And again, I don't know how this group is. I know that there's cults that do get involved with a lot of guns, and then there's other ones that don't. Like David Koresh stockpiled weapons. So, I mean, we never want to have another Waco. So at the end of the day, I hope this is helpful. I'm going to turn on comments for a second. I actually have to go make videos on my YouTube channel that are not related to this. Okay. Did anyone have anything to say before I go? I'm just trying to be very concrete. My dog is like whining here. She's so upset. Do you hear her whining? That was helpful? Okay. Okay, that helps. You're trolling my haters. I do have quite a few haters. I definitely have haters. I don't know about drug abuse, and I certainly don't know about food restrictions. I don't know. Fasting can be a huge part of these cults, and fasting can also make people more unstable, because if you restrict food, it can make people hungry, which then causes them to not be able to think as clearly. Some pastors will call for like week-long fasts, which can make people very susceptible to being manipulated. And I've seen that, but again, I don't know. I mean, she ate a cookie yesterday on live, so I don't necessarily know that they're not eating. I have spoken to people that have been in the church, that have left the church. I've spoken to people about the church services. I've spoken to people about the Bible studies. The lives just don't, unless they actually say something that's of noteworthy. Like if they're just going to be lying and saying that like, we're not in a cult, like of course they're going to say that. And another thing, fasting is a really big part of a lot of these cults. They use it as a means of control. So one key thing that cults will do, and this is actually sort of from the self-help sort of cult world. Are you guys familiar with like the world of like Landmark Forum or those like ESP seminars that they were like week-long seminars and you have to be there from like 7 in the morning until like midnight at night, and you don't get to drink water and you don't get to eat, you don't get to really sleep. Like not restricting food and water and like controlling like when you can go to the bathroom and that kind of stuff is kind of a tactic that's used with a lot of these groups, because when you're hungry and you're tired, you can't think as clearly. But then fasting will be used as a means to say like, well, if you fast, then the good things will happen. But they're trying to keep you as busy as possible and not fed, so then you can't think. But I don't know if that's happening. Most of these groups will fast though. Like the Amway seminars. Yes, and finally, yes, I have lots of haters. You guys, I cover cults. This is what I've done for years now. And so, yes, there will always be people that say, oh, she's a liar. Oh, she did this. Oh, she did that. Like, none of that helps me because I know who they are. If you see them and they upset you, you can either block them or just not engage with them. I ignore them. There's nothing I can do to change their minds. I could say I like cats, and then they'll make a post that says Katie hates cats or hates dogs and is going to wage war against dogs. I mean, that's kind of like their mindset. So, yeah, I have covered so many different cults, and the cults just do not like me. Okay, so I'm not going to give you any spills about what I'm looking into or who I'm going to talk to. I protect sources that don't want to be on the record. And another thing about these coverages is that people that do come forward, it can be extremely risky for them and even dangerous. So not all sources will want to go on record. All right, I have to go because I actually have to get to work, but I hope this was helpful for you guys. And just let them expose themselves. Usually what I do is I ignore the trolls, and then they always, inevitably within a few months, they just start fighting with each other. That's usually what happens. Like they'll start going after me for a few months, and then like another month there'll be a huge fight, blowout, and they'll all be accusing things of everyone else. And they really they're just bored people on the internet. All right. Bye guys.